Trouble in Atlanta looked like silence. Storefronts closed early, sidewalks empty by dusk. Power didn't wear a uniform, it watched from shadows. When 3 officers stopped 17-year-old Kia Brooks walking home from tutoring, they didn't see a scholarship student or someone's daughter. They saw someone alone, someone they could hurt. What started as just a stop spiraled into something brutal: pavement, batons, blood. But they made one mistake. They let her make a phone call. One call to her father, Samuel Brooks, director of the FBI. The moment he answered, Atlanta's balance of power shifted, because now it wasn't just another headline, it was personal. Before we go any further, drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe, because tomorrow the story gets even bigger. It was the kind of Atlanta night where the air hung heavy, warm, still, waiting. Streetlights buzzed with a tired glow. People hurried between sidewalks and car doors, trying to get home before the real darkness came. Midtown was always alive, but on this night there was something quieter, more dangerous, a feeling that something wasn't right. Kia Brooks didn't notice it at first. She was walking home, earbuds in, hoodie on, backpack bouncing against her spine with every step. 17, on a roll, robotics team, applying early to Howard. She had dreams so big they barely fit in her diary. But in this city, all that could vanish with one wrong glance from the wrong person, or in her case, 3 of them. The police car rolled up slow behind her. No sirens, just presence, just pressure. Kia looked over her shoulder. A spotlight lit up her path. Her pace didn't change. She'd been taught not to run. "Stop right there," came the voice. Cold, male, power for sport. She froze. "Is there a problem, officer?" She tried to keep her voice calm, controlled, but her hands were already shaking. The 3 officers stepped out. No body cams, no name tags, just badges, blue, and authority. She didn't know their names, but she'd remember their faces forever. White, angry, arrogant. "We got a call about a girl matching your description. Loitering, maybe carrying something illegal." She blinked. "I'm just walking home from school." "You sassing me?" He moved faster than she could process, grabbed her arm, yanked. Her backpack spilled, books hitting the sidewalk like falling bricks. The other 2 circled. One went for her other wrist. She pulled back. And that's when they said the word, resisting. What followed wasn't just excessive, it was animal. She hit the concrete, knees first, elbow face, fist to jaw, boot to side. The sidewalk stained red. She screamed and it didn't matter. Midtown kept walking, doors stayed shut. Someone filmed from a window, but no one came down. The blows blurred together. She barely remembered the sound of her own voice yelling, "Please, I'm not fighting," or the way the handcuffs cut her skin. But she remembered the officer who leaned down, close to her ear, and said with a grin, "Let that be a lesson, you don't talk back." And then came the call. Her phone had hit the sidewalk but wasn't broken. She begged for one call, and to her surprise, they let her. She knew it wasn't kindness, it was confidence. They didn't care who she called. But they should have. With blood on her lip, barely able to speak clearly, she pressed one name, Dad. It rang once. He picked up. "Kia, you okay?" His voice wasn't just concerned, it was sharp, alert. She could barely whisper the words. "Police, they hurt me." "Silence." "Then, where are you right now?" She told him. He didn't say goodbye, he just said, "I'm on my way." Except he wasn't just a father. He was Director Samuel Brooks, the head of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and 3 rogue cops had just laid hands on the one girl in Atlanta they should have never touched. Samuel Brooks hadn't raised his voice in years. He didn't have to. When the director of the FBI spoke, people listened. When he moved, people got out of the way. His authority didn't come from shouting, it came from history, from decades of working undercover, from long nights in war rooms, from unraveling criminal empires with nothing but patience and pressure. But in the moment he heard his daughter's voice break over the phone, everything else faded. He didn't hear the title, didn't hear the briefings waiting on his desk. He heard her pain, her panic, and then he heard something that lit a fire inside him no threat or enemy ever had. He heard silence, on the other end of the line. She dropped the phone. The instant the call cut out, Samuel's world snapped into focus. He stood in his corner office inside the Hoover Building, Washington, D.C., framed behind glass. He was in the middle of a meeting about counterintelligence threats in Eastern Europe. None of that mattered now. "Everyone out," he said. His senior staff hesitated. "No." The room emptied in seconds. Samuel opened a secure drawer, pulled out a hardened phone, and hit a code known to only 3 people in the country. Within 30 seconds, the call was answered. "Director, I need a tactical response team on standby, immediate deployment to Atlanta. We've got a situation involving my daughter. I want eyes on her location and real-time surveillance in Midtown." The line went quiet. Then, "Sir, is this a personal matter or an official one?" Samuel's jaw clenched. They made it official the moment they laid hands on her. He didn't slam the phone down. He didn't pace. He just moved, precise, deliberate. He called 2 more people, one at DOJ, one inside the NSA. He activated satellite sweeps, traffic camera logs, live feed drone surveillance. The FBI didn't always move fast, but when Samuel Brooks pushed, the entire federal infrastructure followed. His daughter was somewhere in Midtown, either en route to a precinct or bleeding on the pavement. And 3 officers had just crossed a line no badge could protect them from. Back in Atlanta, Kia's body felt like it had been through a wreck. Her wrists ached, her head pounded. She tried to stay upright in the back seat of the cruiser, but every bump in the road sent shocks through her spine. The officer driving glanced at her in the mirror, but there was no sympathy, just cold detachment. The one in the passenger seat smirked as he typed notes into a tablet. They were still writing the story, crafting the lie. "She resisted. She tried to strike us. Uncooperative." Kia wanted to scream, but it hurt too much. Her mouth tasted like copper, her left eye was already swelling shut, but her mind was still working. And she knew the moment her father picked up that call, the entire world would shift. Because Samuel Brooks didn't bluff, he didn't threaten, he acted. When the cruiser pulled into the 5th Precinct parking lot, the sun was already setting behind the Atlanta skyline. The station looked ordinary, tan brick, American flag fluttering in front, but something in the air felt off. Even the officers standing around the entrance glanced up when the patrol car rolled in, their conversations faltering. They felt it. Something was coming. The officers opened the door and yanked Kia out, none too gently. Her knees buckled. She stumbled. "Walk," one barked. She obeyed, but each step was agony. Inside the station, it was all fluorescent lights and tiled floors, desk sergeants behind glass, phones ringing, a busted coffee machine wheezing in the corner. The building didn't scream corruption, but like most evil, it hid in plain sight. They marched her past holding cells and into a gray-walled processing room. An officer with a clipboard didn't even look up. "Name." She said nothing. "Name," he repeated louder. One of the arresting officers spoke instead. Kia Brooks, 17, no priors, claimed she was walking home. The clerk frowned. "That's it." "Resisted, uncooperative, maybe gang-affiliated." Kia coughed. "That's a lie." The officer turned. "Excuse me." She glared up at him through her swelling eye. "I said that's a lie, and the video footage will prove it." His jaw ticked. "Funny thing about videos," he said, "they glitch, get deleted, accidents happen." She was placed in a holding room. Metal chair, no windows, one flickering light overhead. Her cuffs were too tight. She could feel blood crusting under her nose. Every bone in her body begged her to rest, to give in, but all she could think about was the phone call. Her father would come, he always did. But this time, he wouldn't be alone. Back in Washington, the FBI's Tactical Operations Command was coming to life like a machine at full throttle. Screens lit up with satellite maps. Analysts barked coordinates and dispatched agents on encrypted channels. A Gulfstream jet had already been cleared for immediate takeoff from Joint Base Andrews. On board, 6 federal agents, 2 intelligence specialists, and an emergency response medic. Their mission was simple: locate Kia Brooks, extract her safely, neutralize any obstruction through lawful force. But Samuel wasn't just waiting for results. He was already in motion, boarding a separate plane, carrying with him a storm. As the hour ticked by in the holding cell, something changed in the precinct. The air grew tense. Dispatchers started whispering. Phones rang more urgently. The front desk sergeant glanced toward the door more often. Somewhere, deep in the back, an officer got a call that made him pale. His hands started to shake. Whispers moved through the station. "Did you hear? FBI's coming." "What? Her dad?" "Her dad's not just anybody." The officers who arrested Kia exchanged looks, then silence. No one had to say it. They had messed with the wrong girl. When the first black SUV pulled up outside the station, it looked unremarkable, just another government vehicle. But the moment the door opened and Assistant Director Karina Moss stepped out, everything stopped. She wore a slate gray suit and mirrored sunglasses. Her badge shone like a weapon on her belt. She was not smiling. "I want the desk sergeant," she said to the officer standing guard. "Ma'am, we..." "Now." Inside, Moss and her team swept through like a tidal wave. No hesitation, no courtesy, warrants already in hand. Every camera in the building was activated. Every file was requested. Officers were ordered to step away from terminals. The arresting officers were pulled into a side room and separated. Kia hadn't even been told yet. She still sat alone, eyes closed, whispering her mother's name. The door to her cell opened. She looked up. An agent stepped inside, kneeling beside her. His voice was gentle but clear. "Kia, I'm Agent Ruiz. You're safe now." "Where's my dad?" she croaked. "He's on his way." Ruiz tapped a device on his wrist. "Subject located. She's conscious. Bruises, possible concussion. Med team inbound." Tears slid down her cheeks, not from fear, from relief. She was no longer alone in this fight. The officers who'd hit her were being processed in another room, silent, red-faced, trembling. They weren't prepared for what came next. And they hadn't even met the director yet. They didn't hear the jet engines overhead, but they felt the shift in gravity when Samuel Brooks landed in Atlanta. The air around the 5th precinct had gone still, the kind of stillness that follows the snap of a trap. Flashing black SUVs lined the block. News vans jockeyed for space behind police barricades. Cameramen scanned for a shot, but they couldn't get through. The street had become a fortress. Inside, the officers who'd manhandled Kia sat in separate rooms. No phones, no unions, no excuses, just questions, cold ones, asked by agents who didn't blink. Sergeant Tanner, the one who'd pinned Kia with his knee, was sweating through his uniform. His attorney still hadn't shown. No one was answering calls at the department. Every time he opened his mouth, a new accusation was read out. Obstruction, false reporting, excessive force. "They'll spin this," he muttered to himself. But then the door opened, and in walked Samuel Brooks. Not storming, not shouting. Just present. The room changed shape around him. Everyone stood. Even the senior agents froze. He didn't have to introduce himself. Tanner swallowed hard. Samuel walked right up to the table, looked down at the man who had hurt his daughter. "You don't know me," he said quietly, "but I know everything about you. I know about the complaints that went missing, the videos that were accidentally erased, the favors your captain pulled for you." He paused. "I also know about the 2 missing minutes of body cam footage that corrupted right after my daughter hit the ground." Tanner looked away. Samuel didn't move. "Let me be clear, Sergeant. You're not just facing internal review, you're facing federal charges, civil rights violations, assault of a minor, conspiracy to falsify evidence, and obstruction of justice, all of it, every second, every lie." Tanner opened his mouth. Nothing came out. You have the right to remain silent, Samuel said coldly. I suggest you use it. Outside, the news finally broke. Brianne King, daughter of FBI Director Hospitalized after Atlanta police incident. A photo of Kia's swollen face hit the screens, then another, a blurry clip of the officers pushing her to the ground, the headlines multiplied by the minute. Sources say federal agents are on site. City officials silent amid allegations of excessive force. Calls for resignation begin to mount. By the time the mayor held a press conference, it was already too late. He stood at a podium flanked by nervous advisors. Sweat glistened at his temple. We are aware of the incident involving Miss Kia Brooks, he said, forcing a somber tone. We are cooperating fully with federal authorities. We are committed to transparency and accountability. Reporters shouted over one another. Why was she arrested? Did officers violate protocol? Have you spoken to the director? The mayor held up his hands. We don't have all the facts yet. But everyone knew that was a lie. The facts were bleeding on a cell floor, and the country was watching. In a private suite at Emory Midtown Hospital, Kia lay under soft lights, her mother at her side, brushing a hand gently through her daughter's hair. Doctors had confirmed 2 fractured ribs, a mild concussion, and bruising along her spine. She'd barely spoken since they brought her in, but when she opened her eyes and saw her father standing in the doorway, something inside her relaxed. He walked to her slowly, sat beside her, didn't speak for a long time. Finally, she whispered, "They didn't believe I mattered." He nodded, his throat tightening. They're going to learn. But even as federal agents moved deeper into the investigation, even as the arresting officers were suspended without pay, a new war was starting. It didn't wear badges or uniforms. It wore suits, sat in boardrooms, pulled strings in silence. Because across town, inside a downtown high-rise, the chief of police wasn't in his office. He was in a locked conference room, surrounded by people who didn't appear on any organizational chart. A state senator, 2 representatives from the police union, 1 media consultant. This is going to explode, the chief said. You saw the footage. The consultant leaned forward. Then we take control of the narrative immediately. How? We flood the zone, talk about rising crime, gang threats, repeat that she resisted. But she didn't. It doesn't matter. Perception is policy. We get ahead of it. The senator leaned back, steepling his fingers. How badly do you want to keep your job? The chief said nothing. They all understood. That night, a new video appeared online. Heavily edited, grainy, it showed only a few seconds of Kia turning toward the officers before cutting to static. The title beneath it read, "Teen confronts police, resists arrest during routine stop." It spread like fire through the corners of the internet that had already decided they didn't like what the truth looked like. On news feeds and talk radio, why didn't she just comply? In comment sections, probably another entitled kid. On cable panels, we need to let the investigation play out. And just like that, the ground began to shift again. Inside the hospital room, Samuel stared at the screen in disbelief. He watched the footage, paused, rewound, played again. They edited it, he muttered. His wife's voice shook. They're trying to rewrite her. No, he said, they're trying to bury her. But they'd forgotten something. This was Samuel Brooks. And if they thought he was dangerous before, they hadn't seen anything yet. The silence in the hospital room was deceptive. It looked like healing, white sheets, soft beeps, a nurse checking vitals and scribbling quietly. But underneath it all, war was already unfolding, one fought not in bullets or batons, but in servers, search engines, and headlines. Samuel Brooks stood at the edge of his daughter's bed, a phone in one hand, a burner line in the other. He wasn't reading news updates. He was tracking what was vanishing. The original phone video, the one that showed Kia being thrown to the ground, was gone from every major platform. The user account had been suspended. Others who reposted it, shadow banned, hashtags redirected, algorithms twisted. Instead, every search now brought up the same edited clip, Kia turning her head and the label resisting. "They're doing it," he muttered, "scrubbing reality." Grace, his wife, looked up from her chair, eyes tired but sharp. "They're afraid." He shook his head. "No, they're arrogant." Across town, inside a dimly lit apartment, Jasmine Rivera sat on the floor surrounded by textbooks and fear. Her phone buzzed with another warning message. "Take it down or we'll take you down. Your scholarship won't save you." She deleted the message, but it didn't matter. She had already made the decision. She wouldn't stay silent. She had recorded what happened from her window, and she'd seen everything. She opened a burner chat room, the one she and other students had created during last year's school walkouts. The group had fewer than 20 people, but every one of them had a voice. And right now, it was the only thing they could use. "Jasmine, they're trying to bury the truth, but I have a backup, offsite. Dev class valedictorian, upload it, but not to YouTube, use IPFS, decentralized. Tasha film major, I'll edit it, timestamp, watermark it. Amari, we need a name, something people can share. Jasmine, the whole tape." It began small, a 57-second clip, no narration, no music, just the full moment, Kia on the ground, screaming, a boot, a baton, her voice saying clearly, "I'm not resisting." They posted it to decentralized platforms and encrypted it into a blockchain timestamp. Within hours, it had 2 million views. Within 6, it was trending worldwide. But power doesn't yield easily. And the retaliation came fast. At the precinct, a young officer named Collins, who had leaked internal chat logs to the FBI, was escorted off duty. No explanation, just silence. His locker emptied before lunch. At Kia's school, Mr. Bradford, the civics teacher who'd spoken to the press, was placed on administrative leave. At Jasmine's front door, 2 plainclothes detectives showed up, badges out but expressions cold. "We just want to ask a few questions," one said. Jasmine's mother stood in the doorway, blocking them. "She's 17. You don't get to ask her anything without a lawyer." They left without speaking, but their eyes made a promise. They'd be back. In the middle of all of it, Kia lay still, healing, processing. Her body ached with every breath, but her mind refused to shut down. Her father brought her updates in soft tones, balancing facts with comfort, but she saw it, the worry behind his eyes, the tired edge in his voice. "They're not just trying to protect themselves," he told her one evening. "They're trying to erase you." She blinked slowly. "I won't let them." Samuel nodded. That night he sat in the hospital lounge, laptop open, headphones in, talking to someone through a secured VPN. His contact, a former NSA analyst, now living off-grid. "They've scrubbed all digital traces," the voice on the other end said. "Cloud backups, traffic cameras, even phone metadata." "How?" "This isn't just internal police work. This is coordinated. Somebody with deep access is covering this up." "How deep?" "Judges, infrastructure vendors, telecoms." "Then we go deeper," Samuel said. "I want names. I want every officer on that shift, every server touched. I want an electronic footprint from here to Langley." "You got it," the voice said. "But Samuel, this might go higher than you're cleared for." He didn't hesitate. "Then clear me." The next morning, the FBI issued a rare and powerful move, a formal federal civil rights investigation. It meant subpoenas, it meant arrests, it meant the gloves were off. But it also meant escalation. The local district attorney called a press conference and, to everyone's shock, announced that the officers had been released without charges, for now. "We don't have enough evidence yet," he said flatly. Outside the courthouse, hundreds had gathered, students, teachers, clergy, veterans. They held signs with Kia's face and words like "Justice delayed is justice denied," and "We are all Kia." Jasmine stood at the front of the crowd, holding her phone in the air as they chanted. "Say her name, Kia Brooks. Say her name, Kia Brooks." Inside the hospital, the news played across the screen. Kia didn't blink, she just whispered, "They let them go." Samuel looked at her and nodded once, but not for long. That night, the second phase of the retaliation began. Mr. Washington, an elderly man who'd spoken on camera about witnessing the attack, was arrested for failure to pay citations, ones from years ago. The laundromat that allowed protesters to restock bottled water shut down for sanitation violations. The pastor who offered to lead a prayer vigil for Kia, his church's power was mysteriously cut for 2 days. "They're isolating us," Samuel said in his war room, "picking off supporters, making examples." "So what do we do?" Jasmine asked. She had been smuggled into the room by a retired agent posing as hospital staff. Samuel pointed at a map of the city, now lit with red markers. "We organize, we go louder, we go local and federal, and we document everything." In another part of town, Kia's story spread across the walls of barbershops and corner stores. Flyers, QR codes linking to the original tape, stories whispered between neighbors like forbidden scripture. The city hadn't seen energy like this in decades. Kia was no longer just a teenager, she was a spark. And sparks, when fanned by injustice, become fire. Kia hadn't walked since the night it happened. Her legs worked fine. Doctors said she'd make a full recovery in time, but something about standing upright, about returning to a world that had dragged her down so violently, felt like stepping back into the jaws of the beast. Lying in that hospital bed, she still saw flashes of the pavement, still heard the weight in the officers' voices when they called her aggressive. The bruises were healing, but the truth still lived in her bones. Across Atlanta, her name had become both a rallying cry and a threat. Murals of her face were popping up in alleyways. One artist painted her eye black and blue, but had woven the scales of justice across her cheek. A pastor in Old Fourth Ward opened his church doors every evening for candlelight prayers in her name. Students from 3 high schools walked out in protest. People were marching, singing, demanding. And yet she hadn't spoken publicly, not once. The pressure was building. Inside a heavily guarded hospital room converted into a temporary federal safe zone, Samuel Brooks met with his team. The door was closed, the blinds drawn. On the table, a wall of screens, live feeds, facial recognition scans, encrypted documents. The investigation had cracked open something much bigger than one precinct. Assistant Director Karina Moss leaned over a laptop. "We have a problem." She brought up a map. At least 6 other cities were showing evidence of mirrored data tampering, same signatures, same digital footprints. "This wasn't just local," she said. "This is coordinated. Whoever buried the original video has resources, high-level access, possibly black budget funding." "Who's running it?" Samuel asked. She hesitated. "We traced server activity to a contractor linked to a state security task force. They're supposed to coordinate anti-terror efforts. But this," she gestured at the screen, "this is information warfare." Samuel's face hardened. "What about the internal FBI links?" She nodded grimly. "We've got at least 2 agents under review for unauthorized data suppression. One of them filed a report that disappeared before it reached the Justice Department." Samuel pushed the laptop aside. "Then we go outside the chain, we leak it. Carefully, controlled." Moss raised an eyebrow. "You're going public." "Not yet, but we make sure the people who need to see it, see it." In the corner, a young agent named Tors typed rapidly. She was barely 29, fresh from cybercrime, but she'd already earned her spot at the table. "I've created a dead-drop network, peer-to-peer, encrypted through academic IP blocks. It can't be traced. We'll get everything out through student servers, college newspapers, anonymous source leaks, and I'll ghost it all from a public library in Macon." Samuel smiled faintly. "Good, make it loud." Meanwhile, the people of Atlanta weren't waiting for permission to act. In the Mechanicsville neighborhood, a group of grandmothers organized community patrols. They weren't armed, but they carried body cams and clipboards and never walked alone. One of them, Miss Thelma, told a reporter, "We've been protecting these streets longer than most of these officers been alive." In the West End, street poets and musicians held pop-up shows where they remixed the truth. One rapper spit into the mic over a heartbeat bass line. "Say she was resisting, but we know the twist, it's always comply, till it's your daughter on the list." The streets were boiling, but not everyone was celebrating. The governor, under pressure from law enforcement lobbies, declared a temporary security emergency. He deployed state troopers to key intersections, blocked off certain neighborhoods, instituted a citywide curfew. The message was clear: back down or get shut down. That same evening, an anonymous message appeared in Samuel's secure inbox. "Tell your daughter to stay out of the spotlight. You don't want this to become bigger than her." No signature, no metadata. The sender had used a triple-hop VPN through military-grade routers. They were professionals. But Samuel had dealt with professionals before, and he wasn't scared. Kia, on the other hand, was still unsure. That night, her mother helped her from the bed to a chair by the window. Outside, she could see people holding signs across the street, just far enough from the hospital security line. One woman stood silently with a candle, her face covered in tears. A boy held a cardboard sign that read, "You gave us a voice, we're giving it back." Kia stared at them for a long time. "I didn't ask for any of this," she whispered. Her mother didn't rush to reply, she just rubbed her back gently. "I know. I didn't want to be anybody's symbol, I just wanted to go to college, study robotics, build things." Grace smiled sadly. "Maybe this is the thing you were meant to build first." Later that night, Samuel sat beside her. "They're going to ask you to speak," he said. "You don't have to, not for them, not even for me, but people are listening now, really listening, and you may never get another moment like this." She looked away. "What if I say the wrong thing?" "You won't, because the truth doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be real." The next day, Kia walked slowly with a cane, dressed in a black hoodie, jeans, and hospital-issue sneakers, her father on one side, her mother on the other. The hospital lobby was lined with federal agents. Outside, a path had been cleared between the hospital entrance and a small wooden platform where local clergy and student leaders had gathered. No press, no cameras, just her community. A single mic waited. Kia stepped forward, her hands trembled, her ribs ached, but her voice was steady. "I'm not here to tell you I'm okay, I'm not." She paused, took a breath. "I'm here because they tried to erase me, and I'm still standing." Cheers erupted, but she held up a hand. "They said I resisted, but the only thing I ever resisted was being silent, and I won't stop now." She talked about the night, the pain, the fear, but also the people who had showed up, the kids who walked out of school, the elders who stayed up praying, the artists, the fighters, the people who'd had enough. And then she said something the city would never forget. "I'm not the first, I won't be the last, but I'll be the loudest until I'm heard." That night, the speech, recorded quietly by a teacher on a burner phone, went viral. Within hours, "Still Standing" was trending worldwide. And far from Atlanta, in an unmarked federal building, a man in a crisp suit watched the video. He tapped his pen against a folder marked, "Operation, Silence Protocol, Urgent Escalation Recommended." The battle had just found its voice. And now the system wanted it silenced, permanently. The morning after Kia's speech, Atlanta woke to a headline no one expected. "Teen protest icon has alleged gang ties, new documents suggest." The article came from a fringe news blog, but within minutes, it was amplified by larger platforms. It cited leaked documents claiming Kia had once been seen at a party where known gang affiliates were present. It included a blurry photo clearly manipulated, showing her standing next to someone in a red hoodie. There was no date, no context. But it didn't matter. The algorithm didn't care about truth, it cared about rage. By noon, cable news anchors were asking questions. Commentators floated theories about radicalization in youth and urban unrest. It wasn't just a smear campaign, it was a digital assault. Inside the safe zone, Agent Tors slammed her laptop shut. "They've gone nuclear." Samuel Brooks didn't flinch. He had seen this tactic before, just never so close to home. "They've activated a disinformation loop," Tors explained. "AI-written headlines, fake metadata, comment bots. I've tracked IPs bouncing from Estonia to Virginia to South Dakota." "They're poisoning the well," Karina Moss said grimly. Across the room, Kia sat quietly, scrolling her phone. The comment sections were full of bile. "Another fake victim. Lied about the tape. She started it." The lies felt louder than the truth. Jasmine called her from a burner line that afternoon. She sounded out of breath. "They've been by my house twice, plainclothes, asking about where I got the video. My little brother's school called, said there were issues with his enrollment paperwork." Kia gripped the phone tighter. "They're coming after you because you helped me." "No," Jasmine said. "They're coming after me because they're scared. That means we're doing something right." But that didn't mean they were safe. The next blow came fast. Mrs. Daniels, the teacher who had mentored Kia since freshman year, was removed from her classroom pending review of professional conduct. No warning, no explanation. One day she was there, the next she was. At the same time, Reverend Paul, who'd organized 3 community prayer vigils, had his church's bank account frozen for financial irregularities. And the school counselor who'd first reported seeing the attack live on a nearby security camera, she was found unconscious in her car, overdose suspected. She lived, but she refused to speak afterward, said she didn't remember anything, just kept repeating, "It was a mistake, I shouldn't have said anything." People were being silenced, quietly, surgically. And now the state police weren't just watching Kia's home. They were circling it. Unmarked cars idled down the street, drones buzzed low enough to rattle the windows, cell signals glitched randomly, burner phones lost service at strange intervals, even the hospital staff became different, faces Kia didn't recognize, nurses who never made eye contact, orderlies who lingered near doors they weren't supposed to open. Samuel made the call late that night. "She has to be moved." Karina agreed. "We'll relocate her to a decentralized location, keep movement randomized, no digital trail." Tors had already prepared the route. But the next morning, when they went to pull surveillance footage from the hospital entrance to track who had come and gone the night before, everything was gone. Not corrupted, not damaged. Deleted entirely. Samuel stared at the blank footage. "This means we have someone inside." He turned to Tors. "Assume everything is compromised, every phone, every room, every system." Tors nodded grimly. "We go analog, old school." That day, Kia was taken out through the basement in a laundry cart, eyes wide open, mouth pressed shut, her body curled around a burner laptop hidden under the blankets. Their new base was a half-finished warehouse once used for civil defense drills in the 60s. Concrete floors, metal staircases, a single landline with no caller ID. They called it the crate. Inside, the resistance regrouped. Jasmine arrived an hour later, looking over her shoulder 3 times before stepping through the steel doors. Her voice was shaky. "They froze my dad's bank account, said there were flagged transactions. We can't pay rent." Luke, the rookie cop who'd been suspended after quietly leaking precinct chatter, showed up not long after. His arm was in a sling. "Someone keyed my car," he said. "Then someone cut my brake line." He paused. "I think they want me scared." Samuel's voice was low. "They want all of us scared, but fear only works when you're alone." The crate became a nerve center. Tors set up a low-frequency shortwave radio system to coordinate safe houses. Jasmine and two others began archiving all witness statements onto air-gapped drives. Luke compiled officer shift logs, training history, internal memos, anything that might prove a pattern. And Kia. She started writing. At first it was just journaling, getting the voices out of her head, but then it became structured. Paragraphs turned into letters, letters into essays, thoughts she hadn't voiced publicly. She wrote about what it felt like to be thrown to the ground, to taste your own blood and still be called hostile. She wrote about what it meant to be 17 and hunted by a city you grew up in. She wrote about love, about Jasmine's bravery, about Luke's conscience, about Mrs. Daniels' quiet mentorship. And one night, without warning, she recorded herself reading one. The team uploaded it to a peer-to-peer audio feed under the title Testimony from the Crate, Episode 1. It spread like wildfire. Her voice, broken but strong, echoed through phone speakers in barbershops and basements, through burner feeds and Bluetooth radios, through dorm rooms and cafes. They think if they control the narrative, they control the truth. But truth doesn't need permission to exist. Soon there were 10 episodes. Then 20. Each one more raw than the last. Each one more dangerous. The state responded by jamming nearby cell towers. Local news stopped airing protest footage. A new law passed overnight requiring curfew-compliant scans in emergency zones. They had given up pretending. But by then, the crate had already outpaced them. Satellite radios, printed zines, encrypted podcasts posted in the metadata of family recipe PDFs. They weren't just resisting anymore. They were building something new. But it couldn't last forever. Not without sacrifice. That night, Tors burst into the room, breathless. "We've got a traitor." Samuel looked up sharply, inside. She nodded. "I found outgoing signal pings. Someone tried to leak Kia's location, twice, encrypted but not air-gapped, sloppy." Everyone looked around the room. Nobody spoke. The circle had gotten too big. Samuel's face was calm but unreadable. "Shut everything down. No more new contacts. No new allies. We lock this down." And Kia. She stood slowly. Her ribs still ached, but her voice didn't shake. "If they're coming, let them come. But I'm not hiding again, not now." Samuel stepped toward her. "You don't have to do this." She looked him in the eye. "Yes, I do." The war wasn't coming. It was already here. And it was about to go public. The storm didn't hit all at once. It came quietly, calculated, mechanical, and cruel. At 3:17 a.m., the crate's power cut. Not a flicker, not a surge, just an abrupt blackout. The backup generator kicked in only for 2 minutes before sputtering out. Tors jolted awake first. She scanned the equipment panel. "EMP spike," she muttered. "Localized, precision hit." Jasmine, curled on a cot nearby, sat up in alarm. "What does that mean?" Samuel was already pulling on his jacket. "It means they found us." No alarms sounded, no boots on the ground, no flashing lights outside, but the message was loud enough. "We can touch you anywhere." The radio tower Tors had built was fried. Hard drives were fine for now, but their upload lines were dead. Jasmine's secure laptop flickered once and died. The drive with the original video backup, Tors said, was uploading to 6 nodes. It didn't finish. She looked up at Samuel. "We lost the chain." Kia, woken by whispered chaos, limped into the hallway. "What's happening?" Samuel didn't sugarcoat it. "They disabled our system." She blinked. "But we still have the drive, right?" Tors nodded slowly. "Yes, but if we don't get it off-site and into a public node, they'll find us again, and next time they won't leave the walls standing." Kia looked around the room. Every face wore exhaustion, each person trapped between fear and fire. Then her gaze landed on a folded map hanging by the stairwell. "Give it to me," she said. "No," Samuel said instantly. "It's too dangerous." "I'm the only one they won't expect to move right now," she replied. "Everyone thinks I'm still in recovery. They think I'm broken." "You're not broken," Jasmine said softly. "I know, and now they need to know too." By morning, the crate was packed up. Redundancy protocols kicked in. Agents and volunteers split into pods, each carrying decoy drives. Only Kia carried the real one, hidden inside a hollowed-out water bottle in a backpack marked with library stickers. Her hoodie was oversized, her walk steady but slow, her face mostly hidden. Luke, the former cop, had managed to secure an old city vehicle, an old Parks and Rec van that hadn't been tracked yet. He drove. Jasmine rode shotgun. Their mission: reach an off-grid access point outside the city limits, an abandoned university library with a functioning T1 line buried under 2 floors of dust and time. Tors had prepped it weeks earlier. It was secure, mostly forgotten, unmonitored. But they had a narrow window. 35 minutes into the drive, Samuel's burner rang. Tors on the other end. "They're moving on the decoy van." He exhaled. "Good, that gives us time." "Maybe," she said, "but something's off. I'm picking up encrypted state pings on analog towers. They're sweeping frequencies like they're hunting old radios." Samuel cursed under his breath. "They've backtracked us somehow." Meanwhile, inside the van, Jasmine tapped her phone screen. "No service," she said. "Even the burner's gone dark." Luke gripped the wheel tighter. "Stay calm, we've got roots." But even as he said it, headlights appeared in the side mirror. A state patrol car, then another, then 2 more. "We are being followed," Jasmine said. "No lights, no sirens," Kia whispered. "They don't want attention." Luke turned hard into a service road, wheels kicking up gravel. "They want to force us off the main grid, make it look like we ran." A sign flashed past. "Briar Hills State Park, 1 mile." "We take the woods," Kia said. Luke didn't hesitate. He cut the wheel and veered into the tree line, tires bouncing through roots and brush, until the van came to a jarring stop near an abandoned ranger station. They scrambled out. Jasmine grabbed the bag. "No," Kia said. "I carry it." "We don't have time to argue," Luke said. "They're close." They ran. Kia slower than the others, her ribs still weak. Every breath was fire. Every step felt like her bones would shatter, but she didn't stop. Behind them, voices echoed. "Come out with your hands up." It wasn't an arrest, it was a setup. They weren't broadcasting over public channels. No body cams, no backup. These weren't regular officers. These were the same men who'd erased evidence, the same ones who'd pushed Mr. Washington down, who doctored Jasmine's school records, who drugged the counselor, who told Samuel to back off. They weren't law enforcement anymore. They were an enforcement squad. And they were closing in. The group reached the old campus. It was half buried in vines and rot, its windows shattered, its signs unreadable. Jasmine led them to a collapsed stairwell. They climbed down, one by one, into the basement tunnels. There, behind a rusted supply closet, was the line. An old terminal, 1 key, 1 port, 1 chance. Kia pulled the drive from her pack. Her fingers shook. Jasmine plugged it in. "We'll use the old admin panel, local authentication only, if they find us in here." "They won't," Luke said. But then they heard it. Footsteps above. Slow, deliberate. Kia looked at Jasmine. "Do it." Jasmine typed fast, bypassing firewalls, mounting the volume, transferring files. 5%. 12. 24. Outside, flashlights danced in the broken window frames. "They're here," Luke whispered. He drew a small revolver, eyes scanning the stairwell. 40%. 65. 87. Then a noise at the door. The transfer froze. Buffer overload. Jasmine gasped, "No, no, no, no." "Try again," Kia said. "I have to reboot the line, or we lose it all." "Then reboot it. Then we'll lose our only exit path." "I don't care." Jasmine hit the keys, the screen flickered. Outside, boots crunched down the steps. Luke fired once, then again. The door frames shattered. A shout, then silence. Kia crouched over the terminal, her breath ragged. Then the screen blinked. "Upload complete, public node, active." Jasmine yanked the drive. Kia whispered, "It's out. It's out." The sound of a battering ram echoed above. Luke turned, "Run." They didn't make it far. At the rear exit, 3 armed men blocked their path. One of them stepped forward, mask half pulled down. "Well," he sneered, "if it isn't the Golden Child." He raised his weapon. But before he could speak again, a flashbang exploded behind him. FBI tactical entry. Chaos. Light. Gunshots. Then silence. When the dust cleared, Samuel stood at the doorway. "Did you get it out?" Kia was trembling, but she nodded. "It's live." He exhaled for the first time in hours. Outside, black vans pulled up. Agents swarmed the building. Jasmine collapsed against a wall. Luke sat down, cradling his arm. And Kia. She stood in the middle of it all. Covered in dust. Eyes wide. But whole. Tors stepped into view, holding a tablet. "Sir," she said to Samuel, "we're already seeing signal flares. It's spreading." She turned the screen toward him. The footage, raw, uncut, unbroken, was playing. It was on every major social feed, sent through auto text chains, embedded in student emails, passed through dorm networks, on TikTok, on Reddit, on encrypted drives. A teenage girl, thrown to the ground, crying out, "I'm not resisting." The truth was no longer containable. And now it had teeth. It didn't take a full day. The truth moved faster than fear. Within 2 hours of the raw video uploading, it had reached over 35 million views, not just on social media, but everywhere. Primetime anchors were cutting off debates mid-sentence. Morning shows cleared their schedules. Even outlets that had spent weeks downplaying Kia's story now opened with somber tones and graphic disclaimers. "We warn you, what you're about to see is disturbing." The footage played, unedited, in real time. A girl walking home. A police cruiser rolling in slow. Officers stepping out. No struggle. No threat. Then violence. Undeniable. Unjustifiable. Unforgivable. There were no flashy graphics, no commentary, no maybes, just truth laid bare, and once America saw it, really saw it, it couldn't unsee it. Cities reacted like pressure valves finally popping. In New York, students from Columbia and NYU led a march down Fifth Avenue, carrying signs with Kia's face painted in gold. In Chicago, teachers walked out in solidarity, calling for new federal protections for students of color. In Oakland, 2 city council members locked arms on the steps of the courthouse, demanding the Department of Justice invoke emergency civil rights powers. By nightfall, Atlanta itself was alive with people, tens of thousands of them, stretching from the Capitol steps to the stadium, chanting in unison. "We saw it, we believe her, we won't stop." But inside City Hall, chaos ruled. The mayor had disappeared from public view. His press secretary, exhausted and stone-faced, fielded endless calls from reporters who now smelled blood. Leaks began pouring in, officers involved in multiple prior complaints, city funds diverted to surveillance initiatives, emails from the governor's office urging containment. Containment had failed. And now came the reckoning. In Washington, D.C., Samuel Brooks found himself in the middle of a political earthquake. The footage had done what no statement, no hearing, no investigative memo could. It broke the illusion that this was under control. Suddenly, senators were calling for hearings. The Attorney General issued a statement late at night calling the footage deeply troubling and vowing full cooperation. Samuel wasn't fooled. He knew the difference between concern and panic. "They're not responding because they care," he told Karina Moss, who stood with him at the DOJ briefing center. "They're responding because the lie collapsed too fast for them to hide under it." Karina nodded. "We've confirmed 2 more officers involved in the cover-up. They tried to delete security logs and reassign timestamps. We've got them, and we're flipping them." "What about state officials?" "Cracks are forming. Internal messages show the governor's staff was warned about excessive force trends in Atlanta 6 months ago. They ignored it." Samuel turned away from the window. "Then we expose it all." "Sir," Karina said carefully, "there's something else." She handed him a sealed report. It was marked with a DHS insignia and labeled Redline Classification, Threat Escalation Protocol. Inside were assessments of the growing protests, how they were being interpreted by certain security factions as potential insurrection indicators. Talk of mobilizing federal troops under civil unrest doctrine. "They want to spin this," she said. "They want to make her the face of instability." Samuel stared down at the document, jaw clenched. "She's 17, he whispered. "They're not afraid of riots, they're afraid of who's watching her." In the warehouse Stern safe house, Kia sat at a folding table surrounded by legal pads, news clippings, and her own voice notes. Jasmine and Tors were nearby, working silently, eyes red from exhaustion and the weight of everything they'd lived through. Kia's phone buzzed. She had avoided most of the calls: journalists, influencers, talk show producers, even celebrities. But this one came with a direct line to the National Education Policy Forum, an invitation to speak, televised live, at a national summit on student safety and civil rights. She stared at it for a long time. Jasmine finally asked, "You gonna do it?" "I don't know." "You don't have to prove anything," Tors said gently. "You already lit the match. That was enough." Kia looked up, but what if enough isn't enough anymore? That night Samuel sat across from his daughter, hands clasped, voice low. "They want you to speak at the summit." She nodded. "I know." "You don't have to." "Yes, I do." He looked at her for a long moment, the pain of a father who couldn't shield his child from the weight of the world. "Then write it," he said, "and I'll make sure the whole world hears it." She began that night. It wasn't a speech. It was a letter. To her younger self. To the girl who just wanted to get home safe. To the city that betrayed her. To the country now watching. It was raw, unapologetic, filled with pain, but not brokenness. She wrote about her fear of sirens, about the silence of friends who didn't call after the video first leaked, about the strength of strangers who stood for her when she couldn't. She didn't write for applause. She wrote to outlive the moment. 2 days later, she walked onto the stage in D.C. The summit had gone from a niche panel to a global broadcast. Every network streamed it. Viewership estimates ran into the hundreds of millions. And there, under lights that had once scared her, she stood tall, no cane, no crutch. "My name is Kia Brooks," she began, but that name almost became a headline, a hashtag, a cautionary tale. I was almost buried beneath a lie. She paused. "Some people told me to stay quiet, that it would blow over, that justice would work if we waited. But I've learned that silence doesn't protect the truth, it only protects the lie." She spoke for 8 minutes. Not one person interrupted. When she stepped back from the mic, the room rose to its feet. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She just breathed. Deep, full, alive. Later that night, back in the safe house, Jasmine played the footage again. "It's spreading," she whispered. Within 24 hours, 6 new investigations were launched. The governor of Georgia was subpoenaed. The mayor of Atlanta resigned. And on a campus in Mississippi, a girl Kia had never met painted a mural of her across a concrete wall. Underneath it, in bold red spray paint, were the words, "She didn't just survive, she rewrote the story." But even as the country leaned forward, demanding change, demanding justice, Samuel knew the machine wasn't done. Power doesn't give itself up easily. And somewhere, deep in the system, someone was planning a counterpunch. Because if they couldn't erase Kia, they'd try to rewrite everything around her. It began with a headline, quiet, buried on page 6 of a regional paper. Witness in Brooks case under investigation for tampering. No details, no named sources, just enough ambiguity to plant a seed. Within 12 hours, 3 more outlets picked it up. Within 24, it was national. The witness, Jasmine Rivera, the alleged tampering, manipulation of video evidence, and coaching of secondary witnesses. By the time Tors read the piece aloud in the safe house, Jasmine had already received over 400 threats online. Her scholarship was suspended pending academic integrity review. Her family's landlord received an anonymous letter suggesting they were harboring a fugitive. It wasn't a smear. It was a warning. "They're not trying to discredit me," Jasmine said. "They're trying to erase me." Samuel Brooks stood in the middle of the room, face unreadable. "They want to make an example." Kia looked up from her notes. "Then we don't let them." But even as she said it, the weight in the room shifted. Fear doesn't have to be loud to be effective, it just has to be persistent. Later that day, Luke, already suspended, already targeted, was arrested on a trumped-up charge of evidence theft. No warrant, no lawyer, his apartment was raided, devices confiscated. He was released on bail after 12 hours, but the message was clear. One by one, they were being boxed in. And outside the safe house, the air changed. Protest attendance dropped. Some students stopped answering texts. Teachers who had once led walkouts now returned to classrooms, eyes down. Even community leaders were more cautious. Churches received audits. Nonprofits were warned their 501c3 statuses were under review. The state had shifted tactics. No more blunt force. Now it was shadow war. In Washington, D.C., the FBI's Internal Oversight Committee convened in emergency session. Samuel was not invited, but he knew the agenda. There were whispers now that his actions had exceeded his authority, that he had politicized a federal response for personal reasons. A few senators were already calling for an investigation into whether the director had weaponized the bureau. Karina Moss slammed her hand on the table during their evening strategy meeting. "They're turning the story inside out." "They can't afford for her to win," Samuel replied, "because if she wins, the system loses its grip." "But we've got the truth," Tors argued. Samuel's voice was quiet but sharp. "That's not always enough." Across the country, counter-messaging flooded the airwaves. On talk radio, the narrative shifted to institutional trust under attack. Cable networks ran segments debating whether Kia's story had divided the nation. Experts appeared nightly, speculating about dangerous precedent, civil unrest, and outside influence. And then came the footage. Doctored, artificial, dangerous. An AI-generated deepfake surfaced, poorly made, but potent enough to confuse the uninformed. It showed Kia attacking an officer, completely fabricated. Within hours, it was debunked, but the damage was done. Samuel slammed the report down in frustration. "This is worse than disinformation. It's weaponized unreality." Tors was already tracking the source. "We traced the origin to a private contractor with clearance levels tied to the Department of Homeland Security." Karina rubbed her temples. "They're manufacturing chaos to bury the truth." Meanwhile, Kia watched the storm rage from a folding chair in a cement-walled room. The noise was growing again, but this time it felt aimed not just at her image, but her soul. That night she dreamed of the pavement, the sirens, the silence. When she woke, her hands were shaking. Grace, her mother, sat beside her, watching her quietly. "You don't have to keep going," she said softly. Kia looked at her. "Yes, I do. Not for them, not even for the movement, just tell me it's still for you." Kia didn't answer right away. Then finally, "I don't know anymore." The next escalation was surgical. Kia received a subpoena, delivered directly to the safe house by a courier with no badge and no name. It demanded her appearance before a federal grand jury investigating national security implications of unrest stemming from leaked digital materials. In other words, her own testimony was now classified as a national security threat. Samuel read it 3 times. "They're putting you on trial without putting you on trial." "Can we fight it?" she asked. Karina answered, "Legally, yes. Politically, that depends on how much of this country still believes in the law." The date was set, 10 days. 10 days to prepare. 10 days to protect her. 10 days to try to hold the story together. In those 10 days, every corner of the resistance was tested. The student-run media networks experienced DDoS attacks. Their articles were buried by sponsored content and manipulated search engines. Anonymous sources came forward, alleging misconduct, alleging fraud. Most were untraceable, some were outright fake, but every doubt created another crack. And even within their own circles, fractures began to form. A member of the student organizing committee broke ranks, accusing Kia of controlling the narrative for personal gain. Another claimed the movement had been co-opted. And then, of course, came the influencers, some sincere, some opportunistic, all adding noise. "What's the end goal here?" they asked. "What does she really want?" Truth, she wanted to scream. Justice. A reason to believe that this country could look her in the eye and not blink. Instead, she went quiet. But her silence was not retreat. It was a gathering, a coiling, a deep breath before something new. On the 8th night, Jasmine found her in the safe house garage, writing on the wall in chalk. "What are you doing?" Leaving something behind in case they erase everything else. On the wall were just 3 sentences. "They told me to comply. They told me to wait. They never told me how to survive being forgotten." Jasmine stared at it for a long time. Then she wrote underneath. So she didn't wait. She didn't bend. And now they can't forget her. The next morning, Kia recorded a message, not for the media, not for the court, but for the people. It was only 90 seconds. But it hit like thunder. "I didn't ask for this fight, but I won't run from it. I didn't choose to be hurt, but I choose not to be silenced. If they want to question me, I'll answer. If they want to try me, I'll show them what truth looks like under oath. But I won't back down, not now, not ever." The message aired across encrypted streams, community radio, underground blogs. By nightfall, posters appeared in cities from Portland to Philadelphia. "She's not alone." But Samuel knew the system was only pausing, not relenting. "The next shot won't be digital," he told Karina. "They'll try to break her in that room. Legally, psychologically, we have to prepare her for that." And Kia, despite everything, looked at her father with fire in her eyes. "Then tell them to come ready." Because this time, she wasn't just defending herself. She was standing for every name that never got justice. Every name they tried to bury. Every truth they tried to rewrite. The courtroom was what Kia expected. No stained oak benches, no roaring crowd, no flashing cameras. Just a sterile federal building in downtown Washington, 4 gray walls, cold lighting, and a single microphone pointed directly at her face. The grand jury wasn't even visible. They sat behind frosted glass, anonymous and shielded. watching, listening, judging. But not yet believing. Kia took her seat in the witness chair, back straight, voice steady, her palms flat against the polished table. Her father wasn't allowed inside. Neither was Jasmine, not even Karina Moss, despite her badge. Just her, a federal prosecutor, a recorder, and the weight of the nation on her shoulders. The prosecutor's tone was polite at first, disarming, but she'd been warned it would shift. "Miss Brooks," he began, "do you recognize this video?" He pressed a button. The original, uncut footage of her arrest played silently, every frame burned into her memory. She nodded. "Yes." "And you're certain this video is authentic? No edits, no manipulation?" "I'm certain." "You understand that submitting altered federal evidence is a felony?" Her voice didn't waver. "Yes." He leaned in slightly. "You were at the scene, correct?" "I was." "And did you, at any point, physically resist arrest?" She looked him dead in the eyes. "No." He moved to the next question too quickly. "Do you know who obtained the original footage?" "I received it from a witness." "Was that witness Jasmine Rivera?" "I'm not disclosing her name. I'm not here to put others on trial." His expression changed subtly, less curiosity, more predator. "You are aware that a witness in your case is now under federal investigation for potential tampering?" Kia didn't blink. "I'm aware that lies are louder when the truth is winning." That was the first time the courtroom truly shifted. Outside, the city braced. The courthouse was surrounded, not by protesters, but by silence. Police barricades had been set up in anticipation, but the streets were quiet. The media was barred, the people locked out. No signs, no chants, just the weight of waiting. Inside the safe house, Jasmine paced. "She's in there alone," she said. "We shouldn't have let her go like this." Tors sat with her laptop open, eyes flicking between live satellite scans and radio pings. "We didn't let her do anything." She walked in knowing exactly what it meant. Jasmine stopped. "I don't care, we should have stopped her." Tors didn't respond, but her silence was sharp. In the corner, Luke sat with his arms crossed, jaw clenched. "We need contingency plans if they arrest her." "They won't," Tors cut in. "You don't know that." "No," she said, "but I know the system can't handle the fallout if they do." Then her screen pinged. She turned toward them slowly. "We've got a leak." Back inside the courtroom, the tone shifted again. The prosecutor now moved like a surgeon with a scalpel. "Miss Brooks, are you aware of any efforts by your supporters to interfere with federal investigations into the Atlanta Police Department?" "I'm not." "No encrypted messages, coordinated tactics, hidden drives?" She paused. "I'm aware that truth had to be protected from erasure." "Did you or your associates ever falsify any documents?" "No." "Did you solicit help from foreign parties to increase media exposure of your case?" "What?" He leaned in again. "We've obtained new testimony that suggests encrypted data connected to your campaign was routed through international proxy servers. We have someone ready to testify." Kia narrowed her eyes. "Who?" The answer came from a side door. And when it opened, her heart stopped. Jasmine. In a suit. Hair tied back. Eyes lowered. Led by a U.S. Marshal. The silence in the room became a void. The prosecutor turned. "Ms. Rivera has agreed to testify under oath that at least one file in your possession was edited for dramatic effect before distribution. She also claims you were aware of this prior to your public statements." Kia stared at her. Jasmine didn't look up. It was betrayal, yes. But it was something worse, too. It was fear. Kia stood slowly. "Can I speak?" The prosecutor hesitated. "I'm invoking my right to statement under 18 U.S. Code Section 3332. The court technician blinked. You have 5 minutes. She turned to the glass where the jurors sat behind the veil. You've seen the footage, you've read the files, but I want you to hear something from me with no edits and no cuts. She paused. The room seemed to freeze. I was thrown to the ground for walking while black. I was beaten while unarmed. I was jailed while innocent. And now I'm being prosecuted for refusing to stay quiet. She looked toward Jasmine, who was shaking now visibly. They will say I altered a tape, that I told a story, that I manipulated a narrative, but I didn't write this story. This story was written long before I was born. I just refused to let it end the way they wanted. She stepped closer to the mic. I forgive her, she said quietly. Jasmine's eyes finally met hers, tears. I forgive you, Kia said again, louder, because I know what fear feels like, and I know what it means when people use fear as a leash. She looked back to the glass. You are not deciding if I lied. You are deciding if truth is allowed to survive power. Then she stepped back. Silence again. Jasmine broke down. And somewhere beyond the glass, someone shifted, just enough for the balance to tilt. Hours later, the jury returned with a decision. Kia Brooks would not be indicted. The announcement shattered across the city like thunder. No charges. No trial. No silence. Kia walked out into the light, flanked by agents and family, but still on her own feet. Crowds had gathered by then, quiet at first, then growing, then chanting. She stood up. We stand too. Across social feeds, the moment was declared the turning point. But inside the movement, the damage had been done. Jasmine vanished. No statements. No calls. Just gone. Some called her a traitor. Others saw her as a victim. Tors said nothing, but her eyes said plenty. Luke was less forgiving. She cracked, he muttered, and the system knew exactly how to use her. But Kia refused to speak ill. She was part of this, she said, even if fear tore her out of it. That night, alone in her room, she wrote again. Not to Jasmine. Not to the world. To herself. This fight will ask more from you than you ever thought you could give. And then it will ask more. And then more. Until you stop asking how much you have left. And start asking how much longer you're willing to stand. She closed the notebook. Then stood. Again. Because there were 2 chapters left in this war. And she had already decided how it would end. The days after the non-indictment felt like a strange kind of silence. No arrests, no apologies, no celebration. The country had paused, not in relief, but in exhaustion. News anchors spoke more carefully now, their voices filled with terms like systemic reflection and restorative conversations. Op-eds piled in, some calling Kia a national symbol of courage, others painting her as an overexposed teenager swept up in a political storm. But to Kia, none of it felt real. Not yet. Not while Jasmine was still missing. Not while truth remained a battlefield. The resistance had fractured. Some organizers wanted escalation, protests, occupations, economic disruption. Others urged policy reform and lobbying. A few walked away entirely, broken by fear, distrust, or exhaustion. Luke stayed close to the core team, but his anger was growing. They tried to hang you in that room, he told Kia. You think they're going to stop now? They already lost control of the story, she said. That's what scares them. But even as she said it, the system began to flinch and fracture. On a stormy Tuesday in Atlanta, a leaked audio file surfaced online. A 14-minute recording of internal discussion between the Georgia Department of Public Safety and the governor's office, captured 2 weeks before Kia's grand jury hearing. Contain the optics before it hits national. Leverage federal tools if necessary. Make sure the girl doesn't walk into that courtroom with a halo. It was direct, cold, unmistakable, and it dropped like an anvil into the national bloodstream. Suddenly, every denial, every cover story, every smear campaign was now suspect. The governor held a press conference the next morning. It backfired. Protesters surrounded the building. Civil rights lawyers demanded resignations. 3 state senators walked off the floor mid-session and held an impromptu press briefing in the rotunda. "You silenced a child to protect a badge," one of them said. "We will not forget this moment." And still, no word from Jasmine. That night, Kia stood in the middle of the safe house and asked a question none of them were ready for. What if she didn't betray us? Tors looked up. Kia, she testified. But what if she was coerced, blackmailed? What if that was the only way she could survive long enough to give us something bigger? The room was quiet. Then Luke spoke. "She's gone, Kai. We all lost something, but she gave it up." "I'm not so sure," Kia said. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a small envelope she'd received earlier that day. No return address, no markings. Inside was a single microSD card. She handed it to Tors. "Jasmine used to hide notes in code," Kia said. "That's her." Tors plugged it into her system, isolating the connection. The screen went black, then flickered to life. One file. A voice memo. Jasmine's voice. "If you're hearing this, I did what I had to. They came for my family. They said they'd make my brother disappear. They had everything, school records, phone calls, GPS logs. I lied under oath to protect him, but I didn't stay down. There's a hidden server in the basement of the Public Safety Division. It's not state, it's private, black site level stuff. That's where the orders came from. Get in, get it, burn it down. And Kia, I'm sorry." Kia's hand shook as she paused the file. Luke exhaled. She didn't flip. Tors was already mapping the building. If this is real, it's the source of the entire operation. Misinformation, suppression, intimidation, all of it. "Then we expose it," Kia said. Karina, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. "I'll take it to the bureau." "No," Kia said, eyes locked on the screen. "They'll bury it. We do this publicly, on our terms." "What are you proposing?" Karina asked. Kia stood slowly, her voice calm, certain. "We go to the building, we stream it live, we show the world what they tried to hide." Luke blinked. "You mean break in?" "I mean reveal it," she replied. "We don't hide anymore." It took 48 hours to plan. Tors coordinated digital cover. Luke arranged for 3 student groups to simultaneously launch civil disobedience actions to divert law enforcement. A drone team was prepped for aerial footage. And Kia prepared her words. Because this wasn't just another leak. It was the final confrontation. They arrived at midnight. Rain fell in heavy sheets, the air electric with tension. The Public Safety Division building loomed like a bunker, unmarked, windowless, fortified. Jasmine's instructions had been clear. There was a utility hatch in the northeast service corridor that led to the sub-basement, unused since the building's expansion. Luke pried it open. Kia led the way. Tors stayed topside to manage the feed. Inside, it smelled like mold, power, and secrecy. They moved fast, guided by a map Jasmine had embedded in metadata. And there it was. A steel door with a single keypad. "Can you break it?" Kia asked. "No," Luke said, "but I don't have to." He reached into his pack and pulled out a tiny RFID scanner, lifted from an old precinct kit he'd once used on patrol. One sweep. Click. The door opened. Inside, servers, racks and racks of them, humming, blinking, feeding. Tors' voice crackled through the earpiece. "We are live, go." Kia stepped forward, camera on her face. "My name is Kia Brooks, and this is the truth they tried to erase." She turned the camera to the servers. "These are the machines that manufactured the lies. About me, about others, about every person who ever stood up and said, enough." She pulled out a folder from the rack, printed logs, voice recordings, deepfake scripts. Hear how they turned facts into fiction. The screen behind her began flashing. Intrusion detected. Alarms blared upstairs. Time was running out. But they had what they needed. Kia looked into the lens one last time. "To the people watching, this is yours now. Don't just retweet it. Don't just react to it. Remember it. Stand with it. Because they don't fear our outrage. They fear our memory." Then she dropped the file onto the floor, lit a match, and walked out as flames crawled over the blueprint of lies. Outside, sirens echoed. But it was too late. The story was out. This time, they couldn't put it back. By sunrise, the footage had been mirrored across thousands of sites. News anchors reported breathlessly on the exposure of an illegal data manipulation network housed within a state government facility. The governor refused comment. But federal subpoenas arrived before noon. By that evening, 3 state officials resigned. An emergency DOJ investigation was opened. International human rights organizations issued statements of solidarity. And in the middle of it all, Kia walked onto the same courthouse steps where she'd once been nearly erased, and she spoke. No script. No teleprompter. Just her voice. "This isn't about me. This is about who gets to tell the truth and who pays the price for it. They tried to silence us. They failed. Now let them hear us, not once. Always." The crowd erupted. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She just nodded. Because she knew the last chapter had to be written carefully. And boldly. Because what came next would define everything. The city didn't sleep that night. Not just Atlanta, but DC, New York, Oakland, Detroit, Chicago, Baltimore. Cities across the country buzzed with noise and energy, and something harder to describe, something alive. The footage from the Public Safety Division building had become the most downloaded piece of media in the nation's history within 72 hours. The fire lit by Kia's final broadcast wasn't just metaphorical. It burned. Laws were drafted. Resignations mounted. A Senate Oversight Committee was formed in emergency session, and for the first time in over a decade, both parties agreed the system had crossed a line. Words like deep state misinformation protocols, racial targeting networks, and domestic psyops became unavoidable in headlines and hearings. The president addressed the nation from the Oval Office. Calm, composed, but shaken, she acknowledged systemic failure and promised full transparency, but the speech fell flat. It was too late for damage control. America had already seen itself unmasked. In the weeks that followed, ripple effects spread far beyond Atlanta. 5 more cities launched independent civilian review boards with power to subpoena law enforcement data. 32 officers across 3 states were suspended pending internal investigations. And the FBI, under Samuel Brooks's lead, issued a sweeping review of surveillance practices and interagency influence operations. Samuel didn't care about headlines. He just wanted his daughter to sleep again. But sleep didn't come easy. For Kia, the nights were still quiet, but the silence was heavier now, not empty, but echoing, full of faces, moments, memories, names she'd never forget. She didn't go back to school. Not yet. She took time. Time to walk in the woods, to write without sharing, to remember who she was before the weight of a movement sat on her chest every morning. Sometimes she sat alone on the roof of the Safe House Stern historic site and watched the horizon. And sometimes Jasmine sat beside her. They didn't talk about the betrayal. They didn't need to. It lived between them, acknowledged, but no longer dividing. One day, Jasmine handed her a small box. Inside, a bracelet. Simple, handmade, braided with 2 strands of thread, one red, one gold. "I thought you might want something that wasn't digital," she said softly. Kia took it, wore it, never took it off again. A month later, the first truth hearing convened in Atlanta. Not a court, not a spectacle. Just people. Speaking. Telling. Witnesses, victims, families, officers who had seen and stayed silent, now ready to step forward. Kia opened the hearing with a poem. Not a speech. A piece she had written in her notebook during one of the darkest nights. "They wanted me invisible. So I learned to speak louder. They wanted me silent. So I learned to echo. They wanted me gone. So I learned to become 1,000 voices. All saying, 'We are still here.'" She didn't cry when she read it. Others did. The hearing ran 6 hours. Then 8. Then 12. And when it ended, there was no verdict. Just truth, released into the open air like smoke, escaping a long-closed door. Years later, scholars would call what happened the Kia event. A turning point. A fracture in time. Some would write dissertations, some would build curriculums, a documentary was made, a biopic optioned, a mural of her face painted 6 stories high in Atlanta's West End. But she didn't see herself that way. She stayed out of the spotlight after that. Declined talk shows, declined interviews. She went back to school, quietly, studied political science and ethics, spoke only when needed. Because she didn't need to be the center anymore. She had already changed the perimeter. One day, 3 years after the fire that burned the servers down, a group of students asked her to speak at their graduation. She said no at first. Then she changed her mind. She walked onto the small campus stage, now unrecognizable to some of the world that once only saw her as a headline. She wore no makeup, no armor, just a gray jacket and the bracelet Jasmine had given her. She stepped to the mic. Paused. Spoke. "I'm not here because I was brave. I was scared every day, every second. I'm not here because I wanted attention. I wanted quiet, I wanted normal. But normal is a privilege some of us don't get. And silence. It protects the lie. So I spoke. Not because I knew how, but because no one else would. And what I've learned since then is this. Speaking the truth doesn't make you free. It makes you responsible. And if we all carry that responsibility, we never go back. We move forward together." The students rose, not in applause, but in witness. And Kia walked off stage into the arms of her father, still director, but older now, softer, proud. Behind her, the world kept spinning. But in front of her, something else. Something new. They built a memorial later that year. Not for Kia. For the unseen. A stone circle in the heart of Atlanta, engraved with names that never made headlines. Each one etched into steel and light, pulsing with sound. Stories played through embedded speakers, told by survivors, loved ones, witnesses. At the center of the circle, one final line. "They tried to bury us. They didn't know we were seeds. So now you've seen it, start to finish." A story that began with pavement and silence ended in fire and testimony. But the truth, it doesn't end here, because this wasn't just Kia's story, it's ours. It's the story of a system that feeds on silence and shrinks from sunlight. And it's the story of what happens when just one person, just one, chooses not to look away. So ask yourself, How many Kias have we already lost? How many never got the chance to speak? How many names never trended, never trailed smoke, never made it past a folded police report? This time the truth escaped. But next time it might not. That's why this can't be just something you watched. This has to be something you carry, something you spread, something you fight to protect. So here's what you do. Share this story, not just for views, not just for clout, but because every view is another shield between her and the machine that tried to erase her. Talk about it in your school, in your workplace, in your home. Make it awkward, make it uncomfortable, because silence is the soil where power grows unchecked. Name the problem, not bias, not tensions. Call it what it is: targeted violence, institutional betrayal, a legacy of erasure dressed up in blue uniforms and legalese. Support those still fighting, whether it's the students in your city organizing walkouts, the nonprofits building legal defense funds, or the teachers trying to hold space for kids who look like Kia. Support them. They're frontline, always have been. Pressure your leaders, not with emails they can delete, with voices, with votes, with disruption, with memory. Make them understand we are no longer asking, we are demanding, and we are not going away. Protect the record, archive this, download it, burn it to a drive, store it on your phone. Systems change when memory outlasts fear. And finally, don't let them rewrite it. You know how they do it. First they question the footage, then the character, then the motives, then the facts, until all that's left is doubt. Don't let them, not this time, not with this story. Because Kia didn't just survive. She didn't just speak. She sparked something. And what you do right now, yes, you determines whether that spark becomes a signal or just another echo in the void. This is the part where most stories roll credits. But real life, it rolls forward. So roll with it, push it, spread it, stand in it. Because when the next girl calls her father, or the system won't answer, we have to. Every single time.